All right, welcome to another episode of Goal Horns and Fight Songs. I'm your host, as usual, Wes, or on Twitter at Painted Bronco. This is my co-host, Mike, or at Maro04 if you are on the Twitters. How was your weekend?
It was pretty good. Pretty good. How was yours?
Could have been better. Could have been better.
Now that'll always happen.
You know, when you get swept, it's not a good thing.
Oh, maybe you need to join the team and make them play better. Just become a coach or something.
No. No. That's a bad idea. I'll continue just to yell inappropriate things from the other side of glass and netting.
You inappropriate? Never. Never.
No, I mean, not really. I'm actually a pretty appropriate fan. That's why I paint my face. That way I don't have to yell inappropriate things.
Yeah, that's just nobody should have to see that.
The louder my face is, the more attention I grab, and then I don't have to say things. Because everyone's already looking at me. Honestly, the weird thing about this weekend, and they kind of covered it in the press conference for anyone who follows the Western Michigan hockey press conferences on YouTube, they just didn't play a complete game. They didn't play 60 minutes. And they got burned twice in the second period because of it. In NCHC hockey is 60-minute hockey every game.
Mm-hmm.
So I think recognizing it is a good thing, but you kind of would have hoped they would have learned the lesson from Friday night to Saturday night, because they got burned in the second period Friday night for 3 goals, and they got burnt in the second period Saturday night for 4 goals. So didn't quite learn the lesson as quickly as they needed to.
I think that was a little bit of a theme for the weekend was you can't overlook anybody. UMD ended up getting the sweep technically, but the second game went to a shootout with Colorado College, who is a bottom feeder in this conference. So you can only go one game at a time, one period at a time, and just fight hard, because it's not going to be easy no matter who you're playing.
Yeah. I mean, and Denver was coming off of a little skid, and they were able to find their game and get back to playing Denver hockey. But, again, it's just disappointing to be swept in this conference in the manner in which we were. Both times we were going into the second period with a lead, couldn't hold the lead, looked flat in the second period, and went on to lose the game. So, hopefully we can get back on the horse and find our winning ways again, even though we have St. Cloud coming into town, the number 2 team in the country. So hopefully that's a big enough task that the boys wake up and play their game.
Yeah, and I think I think they'll wake up, but St. Cloud, they're not as perfect as they seem. They ended up having to split this weekend with Omaha. They won 5-1, but then Omaha was able to beat them 3-2 this weekend, or on
3-2,
Saturday.
3-2 Saturday in overtime.
So
that just, I think, speaks to the strength of this, and we've said it week in and week out, the strength of this conference from top to bottom is kind of unparalleled when you look across the landscape of college hockey.
you have 4 out of the top 5 teams in the nation, or at least 3 out of the top 5. I think I'm looping Mankato in there, just saying 4 out of the top 5 are from Minnesota. But you got St. Cloud, UMD. They're throwing North Dakota in there. It's a tough conference, and you have the best competition. But at the same time, the teams that are going to finish at the bottom of the standings, they're not anything to be laughed at, because they're going to compete week in and week out, and they proved it this weekend. There was a lot of close games and a lot of top teams losing at least one, or if not both, with like Western.
Yeah, and Denver was literally the lowest. They were 8 of 8 going into this weekend, and now they're quite comfortably in the middle, getting back to 500, where Western slips to 1-3 in conference play. So,
and that's a that's a tough thing in the conference. You don't want to get swept in conference because you dig yourself a hole that a lot of other conferences, if you're a good team, you can get out of pretty easily. But you get swept in the NCHC. It's not fun to get out, and it's not going to happen very often that one team's going to get swept and you can gain a little more ground. A split is going to be it's going to happen more often than not.
yeah, for sure. And even when you're a team that gets swept, like, it's hard to come back because the next team is just as tough, or even if not tougher. So to build back up after getting swept is not no easy task when you're talking conference play, especially with the teams that we regularly see and watch. In non-college hockey related news, Scott Prunovich was called up to the NHL and is making his debut tonight. And as of the time of the recording, their game is currently tied 1-1 between the Blues and the Coyotes.
And I think well deserved for him. They were just interviewing his parents on the broadcast, and I've known, not very well, but known Scotty since he was a little kid playing summer tennis in Hibbing. And I think it's well deserved for him. He was the only defenseman on, I think, top 20 at least in scoring for the AHL. He had 2 goals, I think 18 assists the last time I looked. Otherwise, all forwards. So St. Louis, they needed to call him up, and he's going to be good for a really long time. Watching him play at UMD, he's got a couple national championships under his belt, quarterback the power play. Not the biggest defenseman that you'll ever see, but he has the skill of like an Erik Karlsson, sees the ice really, really well, can pass the puck. Might not get you as many goals with the shot, but he will find open teammates and pile up the assists.
Yeah, and it's probably, I think that's probably my favorite thing about the conference that both of our teams are in, is we're watching guys who have a pretty good chance of making it to the top level of the sports that they play. And I mean, there's definitely a lot of guys who stay local here in Kalamazoo and go to the ECHL, which is by no means the top level of professional hockey, but it's nice to see them still getting a chance to be a pro and to gain there, to have that life experience and potentially move up, even though it's less likely from those kind of levels. But again, it's currently Trevor Gorsuch, one of my favorite goalies to play at Western, and is with the K-Wings right now. And it's one of those guys where, like, you want to go to a game to support someone that you supported while they were in college, and want to watch and see them develop even more in the pro ranks.
Exactly. And just a couple games ago, Riley Tufte made his NHL debut with Dallas. Alex Iafallo has been playing in the NHL for the Kings. Mikey Anderson has been playing. Alex Stalock from the first national championship team for UMD in 2009. We all know that he's playing. So it's really fun to watch guys now that you've seen and doing really well and making their debuts, getting the chance to play at the highest level. And then that reinforces what you're watching, being like, yeah, these guys can play. This is the top tier of hockey. This is what we want to watch and why we love this conference.
Right. And I think who was it? Tyson Berry was a UND guy who went to Colorado, or went to the Avalanche, and kind of immediately started playing pretty well with them. So I mean, there's guys that are getting opportunities and showing that they can compete at that level coming from this conference.
There's not a lot of not a lot of time in the AHL, especially with how the conference has evolved. Carson Soucy, who's now on the Kraken, he's another one. He played a couple years in the AHL, but now it says something about a player where, yeah, the team you're with didn't want, well, in a sense, didn't want to protect you, but the Wild had no option because they had uh, Dumba, Spurgeon, and Brodeen all under no move clauses, so they had to expose him. But it also says something that this is who, this team wants me. That's the player that the new team has their eye on. And NCHC player, it reinforces it. Hey, another guy in the NHL, another guy playing top minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Um, let's see what else. Some more college hockey. I think the top plays of the week actually had 6 plays, and it was once again a defensive play from a Western Michigan player making the way as he's covering an empty net. Maybe not so much self inflicted this time as last time, as Denver had great puck movement most of the night and was getting Bussy to move around.
Yeah, I actually didn't get a chance to see those, but I can pull them up here. I do know, and we'll get into it. I did see players of the week and goalies of the week, so you can expand a little bit more on the plays of the week and what you thought of those.
I mean, for the most part, it was from pretty good offensive moves. I think what we're seeing a lot is a lot more puck movement amongst players, and that ability to actually get the goalie out of position. There was another play between Denver and Western where I can't remember the player's name, but he's behind the goal line on the side of the net and ends up feeding the puck past, like, behind Bussy to an open player who just buries it in an empty net. So I mean, it's plays that you could see being made at an NHL level. Honestly, is what we're seeing in the top plays.
Yeah, that goes back to what we were saying. The skill level of these kids in general is at an unbelievably high level, and their IQ on what they're doing. Now, yeah, sometimes you get plays like that, and your teammates have to come to your rescue. But it, overall, the hockey IQ for everybody is extremely high.
Yeah, and I think some of that, especially this season, has to just do with the amount of experience that's in the conference right now. You have a lot of teams like Western who got a lot of guys to come back. St. Cloud got a lot of guys to come back. Um,
UMD had a lot of guys come back.
yeah, UMD had a lot of guys come back. I think the only team that underwent the biggest change between this year and last year is North Dakota, and they seem to be answering a lot of the questions that we had with, they are North Dakota.
Yeah, I think between them and Colorado College, they had the biggest changes because CC had a lot of transfers come in, and they're also very very young. Uh, them in North Dakota, and actually CC, they're proving that they can adapt to whatever the other squad is doing. They might not get the win on Saturday, but they're gonna put up a hell of a fight and make it close. Um, it was 5-1 on Friday. I ended up shutting it off after it was 4-1, and I'm like, I'm gonna take a nap. Just wasn't that entertaining anymore for me, and wasn't concerned about UMD losing the lead. Saturday I was not able to watch it, and then kept looking 0-0, kept looking 0-0, kept looking, and it ended up 0-0 and being decided in the shootout. Uh, so Colorado College is also answering a lot more questions than we thought they would. Kind of like North Dakota is.
Yeah, yeah. North Dakota has found themselves at the top of the standings, able to sweep their start to the season so far. You know, they're 4-0, 8-3 in regular or overall. So definitely a team that's able to figure it out and put it together on the ice week in and week out, and a team that's, well, we had questions about. I think they're definitely exceeding my expectations for what I thought they were going to be, especially early in the season. But
And you have to.
but I guess you have to wonder, like, can that be sustained with such an inexperienced team? Our team's going to figure them out.
Right.
So watching them the rest of the season is going to be something interesting.
And so far, it's been a credit to Brad Berry, their head coach, that that was the other question coming in. Okay, what does he do with such a new group of guys? You got basically half your team brand new. How good of a coach are you? What can you do with them? But he's been there long enough. They are his guys that are coming in. It's not like he's a second year coach and half the team was from the previous coach. Um, it's his guys. He knows what they can do, and you have to give him credit. They Miami, they're going to be a little bit more on the bottom, who they swept this weekend. But Denver, you can't really say anything about them because they swept Western, who split with UMD. That's a good team that got swept by North Dakota. So they're playing hard and they're playing well, and they're silencing us critics of them and showing that they are North Dakota for a reason.
Yeah, I think the longevity of that team is still yet to be determined, and kind of playing the perennial top teams in the conference, which I think they're going to start getting into here pretty soon. Yeah, they have Duluth this weekend, and then I'm not sure who they have next weekend, but
And they have the Gophers, so that'll be interesting. That's always a fun series, just because it is the main university versus North Dakota, and very bitter WCHA rivals. And then they get into St. Cloud. So UMD, Minnesota, and then St. Cloud. They don't have an easy stretch coming up here.
yeah, and Western's in the midst of a good chunk of their a difficult spot in their schedule too, because they just finished UND, Denver, and now they have St. Cloud coming in this weekend. So, lots of good hockey still left to play, and definitely a chance to move up in the rankings again, both in conference and in overall ranking. So, it's still pretty early in the season, but I think the end goal is to be there when it counts, and hopefully this team can, at least as a Western fan, this Western team can rebound after a tough weekend, get fans to show up and show out, and be the energy that they need if they need it. Be that little pick me up. So
yeah, and that's all that you want to do. The first step is get that home playoff series in the first round of the conference tournament. Get that home ice, and then once you're there, come to St. Paul and show what you can do in the semifinals, and then hopefully finals. But the real teams show up when it matters, and that's what UMD has done, and that's what St. Cloud has done too, for the most part over the last few years. Western, they've kind of shown up, but not to the extent that they should.
They haven't done it consistently enough, because there's been times where they've been able to sweep the number 4 or the number 1 team in the country, and then the next weekend they might be playing someone who's unranked, and it's an awful weekend. So, the great teams can do it consistently. They can do it weekend in and weekend out. And they can do it year in and year out and build and get guys who want to come and play because they can compete at that upper echelon every year. So it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy is what you're able to accomplish within the realm of college sports.
It is. It's, and I don't think it matters what sport you're talking about. If you have a good team, the good players will come because they want that exposure. They want to do well, and you have a if you have a good conference, the good players will also come. Whether you're, you know, football, whether you're in Alabama or you're a Vanderbilt, you're still playing SEC football. In college hockey, you're still playing NCHC hockey. You're competing against the best week in and week out, uh, and so it is that self-fulfilling prophecy where as long as you have some success in the tournaments and then you see how competitive you are throughout the year within the conference, it's like, well, why wouldn't I go here? Why wouldn't I showcase my talents? Because that's where they're going to pay attention.
Exactly. Let's see. So you guys have Colorado College. Nope, you just finished Colorado College.
Just finished CC.
You have North Dakota coming in this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, you guys are at North Dakota this weekend.
Yep, at North Dakota, and then next series is with Alaska Fairbanks,
who Omaha is playing. So that should be an interesting. And Omaha is back on the road. So not so much more home cooking for the boys from Nebraska. They got a trip ahead of them this weekend. Like I said, Western has St. Cloud coming in. Another top 10, top 5 team coming to Kalamazoo to be in front of the Lawson Lunatics, and like we mentioned, or at least I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, like I'm hoping that the student section can be the spark that they need to be if they need to be it. Coach Frischweiler mentioned in his press conference this afternoon, like, Lawson's one of the toughest places to play. It's not the biggest barn, but it's a tough spot to play when the crowd is right. So I'm hoping we can get the right crowd in there, both student section and not student section. Just a place that understands the predicament that the team is in, whether the team's providing energy to the crowd or the crowd has to provide some energy to the team. Like I think if you're actively paying attention to the game, you can see when that needs to happen, and hopefully it does, and it's not just a lot of the same thing repeated from the student section, like we saw kind of with the Saturday game of versus UMD.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I'm a little bit worried about this weekend with UMD. Like Western, there's not a whole lot going on in Grand Forks as far as sports go. That is their team. University of North Dakota is what they have. That's the closest sports that they have, and that the hockey team is huge. Big arena, a lot of students are going to be at that game. That could give North Dakota a big boost of energy against UMD, and I could potentially see a sweep from North Dakota against UMD. Hope not, but it is a possibility because of how crazy they are about their hockey. And I know firsthand, they're North Dakota fans, there's something not quite right about them. They care a lot about that team.
Yeah, and they travel for that team too. They're probably one of the better, if not the best, traveled teams in college hockey for sure.
Yeah, I would say they're probably the best. You go anywhere where they're playing, and it seems like at least half the arena is full with North Dakota jerseys.
Especially if it's a neutral site game for sure.
Oh yeah.
Um, not entirely. I mean, this will be the first chance I've actually gotten to watch St. Cloud State this year. I haven't really been following too much attention to them. Miami and Denver, that should be a pretty good series. I think those two teams are pretty evenly matched. Denver gets to stay home, so a little less travel for them after last weekend. I think Miami will be traveling again. I'm not entirely sure if I don't remember if they were the home team or not. No, they were the home team last week.
And they're home this week against Long Island. Or am I?
Should be Denver this week. Miami and Denver.
Miami
at Denver.
Yep, Miami at Denver. I was a week off on my scheduling.
The only one I can't see is who Colorado College has.
They are. It looks like they're off.
It could be their off week, and that because Omaha has Fairbanks, so it's not a full NCHC weekend.
Yeah, it looks like CC is off until. Oh, it'd be nice if this loaded. Yeah, it looks like CC has 2 weeks off before they play Omaha.
Good chance for them to get rested, recuperated, and search.
Yeah, and maybe travel a day early to Omaha and hang out. Maybe get a little team bonding activity in there. Get the guys a chance to create some chemistry. I was looking at the players of the week, and the one that did stand out, I know we talked about it, I believe last week, was Ryan Fanti getting his first career shutout, and he was able to get 2 more. I actually said the score wrong. It was 5-0 on Friday. I thought CC had gotten 1, but he had shutouts both games this weekend, so he's picked up all 3 of his shutouts within the last couple weeks, which kind of solidifies him as the number 1, even though Stayskal has been out. You get back-to-back shutouts, you kind of just put yourself in position to be the number 1.
Oh, for sure. Most definitely, especially and those weren't easy to come by. And he rebounded really well in the Western Series coming off of Friday's play. So, congratulations to him for the great weekend he had.
Yeah, he's 6-1-1 with a .946 save percentage and a .136 goals against. And they're not playing. There's not a cakewalk of an opponent that they've played so far this season. I think the closest thing that you could say would be Colorado College, and they proved that they are not that. But with Minnesota, I believe Mankato, Bemidji, there hasn't been an easy schedule. So to have those sort of stats coming into or coming out of last weekend, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and he's leading the NCHC in almost every goaltender category he could. The only one he's not winning is wins. There are 2 guys tied at the top of the league with 8 in Zach Driscoll and David Renak.
Yeah, Renak for St. Cloud.
So, but Fanti is leading everything else: goals against, average, save percentage.
And actually, Driscoll and Renak were not nominated for goalie of the week. Interestingly enough, Chorna from Denver, Roden from Omaha, and Vernon from Colorado College were all nominated, and I don't know who was in net on Friday for CC, so my guess is Vernon was in on Saturday and someone else was in on Friday because I don't think you get that nomination letting in 5 goals.
No, and I think they might have. Vernon definitely did not start Friday. He might have come in later. I believe they might have switched goaltenders later in that game. But I know he did not start. I had all 4 games up at one point on the NCHC TV app, and I do know that he was not the starting goalie.
You're so rich.
That's not true. Let's not
Such a sweet brag.
let's not say that. Okay.
I only had the UMD game on, and was not able to watch it Saturday night, which was fine by me. I think it was. It may have been an entertaining game, but at the same time, with the score, yeah, it was okay that I didn't miss much excitement except for the shootout.
I don't mind 0-0 games. I think it shows a lot of what how the team wants to play, and how well they can overcome adversity. When you have a game like that, where you're really just a battle of wills and who has the stronger will.
And personally, I do enjoy a 1-0 hockey game, a 2-1 game, like the low scoring, because it makes any goal that much sweeter, especially playoff hockey when there's no overtime and then shootout, and we'll see what happens there. If it's sudden death and you're playing everything out the way it should be, I love those games. They're stressful when your team's in it, but it's still so much fun to watch.
Oh, 100%. And a lot of I mean, you can get a lot of those games in an NCHC season. I could see, a couple of those games this weekend going that way, for sure.
Yeah, it's almost better that they have the overtime and the shootout, because by the time tournaments hit, yeah, you might have 5 NCHC teams in the tournament, but they're all going to be out in the first round because the kids have played about 5 or 6 additional games just with the overtime, with how close the conference is.
Yeah, was the Duluth North Dakota game last year, was that in the conference tournament, or was that in the big tournament?
That was in the big tournament. That was
5 overtime extravaganza.
Yeah, and I think at least UMD didn't have a first round game. I can't remember if North Dakota had one or not, but it really wouldn't have mattered at that point because you have the 5 overtimes. They played 2+ games and then had to play the next day.
Yeah.
So but that's how it should be. I mean, and 2 conference rivals. Everybody hates North Dakota except North Dakota. That's in the conference. North Dakota hates everybody because they're against everyone's against them. So it made for such a fun game. And actually, we UMD used both goaltenders because Fanti went out. I think he was cramping up so bad from playing that Stayskal had to come in like the 3rd overtime.
Yeah.
And then play basically a whole game after sitting on the bench for a game and a half.
That's crazy. I think that about wraps everything up, unless there's anything else we can think of or want to mention.
I don't think I have anything pressing. I'm gonna look at how Prunovich is doing in his debut. I see it's 2-2.
I think it's 2-2 after 2.
Yep, looks like 2-2 after 2. Doesn't have a point yet, so Scotty, you're letting me down. You're my one claim to fame.
I guess if we wanted to, we could pick series this weekend, but I think we sort of did potentially.
Yeah, we sort of did. I think I can go through quick. I think Western and Cloud split. Unfortunately, I think UMD gets swept by North Dakota just because it's there. Uh, I'm hoping for a split, but I do think North Dakota will come out with the sweep. And then I think Denver sweeps Miami. They're playing at home. Miami, they'll make it close. One, if not both, will go to overtime. But I think it's going to be a rare weekend where you have multiple sweeps in there. I think 2 out of the 3 are sweeps.
I think Western and St. Cloud is going to be a close contest. I want to say it's going to be a split, but that kind of depends on how well Western can sustain their defensive play and how well they can play in front of Brandon, because Brandon's going to give up some goals. It's just the nature of the way he plays goalie.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of relies on a good defense in front of him. And for the most part, Western's able to play that. I think if Western can play big and they can kind of... St. Cloud's usually one of those teams that they rely on the open space that they're able to create with their speed. So if Western can kind of keep them to the outside and pin them against the wall and tire them out, Western could have a chance at winning, potentially sweeping. But I think the split seems more likely there. The Duluth Dakota one is an interesting one. It's a super interesting matchup. You have North Dakota with, coming off of 2 straight sweeps of a good Denver team and a good Miami team. You have the goaltender in Fanti who has 180 minutes of regulation shutout hockey under his belt. It's almost the immovable object meeting the unstoppable force in those two, and it's just who's going to give. I think North Dakota blinks. I think Duluth wins Friday, but North Dakota answers back and wins Saturday, and they split.
Okay.
I think it's harder to keep the undefeated streak that North Dakota has going than it is for Duluth, because Duluth has been kind of riding their goaltender more. So if they just get a little bit of defense in front of him, it's not so reliant on what Fanti can do.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what they did in the shutout of Western, was played solid defense and let Ryan just kind of
see where he needed to be and be there, because
do his thing, not work hard.
Yeah, there were no dirty goals given up in that game. Like, if a puck was in front of the crease, it was not moving, and there was at least 3 maroon jerseys around it. So, yeah, I think that's a possibility of happening. I think they split. I think Duluth wins Friday, Dakota wins Saturday. Miami and Denver. If the Denver offense gets going like it did against Western, they're going to be a tough team to beat. They were able to pick tiny little spots and put the puck exactly where they wanted it to, and they were able to move not just the goaltender, but it seemed like our entire defense was biting on every deke and every pass. So they had basically both defensemen and the goaltender moving themselves out of position and creating a lot of open net opportunities. So I'm going to lean Denver.
Yeah, I mean Miami, they
And
are. I do think, like I said, I think Denver.
it's hard to say they sweep though, but I think Denver wins Friday, and if they win Friday, they could. I mean, granted, if they win Friday, they clearly they're the only two out of the only one out of the two that could sweep. But it depends on how they play Friday. It really does, because you're coming off of a big emotional win this last weekend. In that you had lost four straight, you get the monkey off your back, you sweep a team that was in the top 10 with strong offense. Um, but you took a lot of penalties too, and the PK was not as good as it could have been or should have been. Granted, Western has a really good power play.
Yeah, and I think that's um, speaking of the special teams. I think that's one thing that's going to hurt UMD this weekend. Uh, we are. I don't know what North Dakota's PK is, but we're one of the worst teams in the nation. We're in the 40s as far as power play goes, percentage wise. Um, and CC was not very good on the PK, but
Wait, you wanna hang on? Your numbers don't make sense. If you have a 40% power play, that's an
no,
extraordinary
no,
power play.
no, not rank wise.
Oh,
We yeah, ranking wise, I I don't have the notebook down. I think it was something like 47th in the nation
okay, okay, okay.
in power play percentage, and CC was like 35th, some in the mid 30s for their penalty kill, and we still couldn't do anything.
Yeah,
So North Dakota is going to be better than that,
but I
and
mean,
if it gets to be a special teams sort of game, not a chance.
but then again, wait, no, was it? No, Western's PK was actually really good against Duluth. It was Colgate, I think, that the first night that we had a problem on the PK.
Yeah, yeah, you don't remind me of that Friday game.
Western's special teams have been pretty good so far this year.
I
Um,
mean, Ethan Frank shorthanded goal.
that that kid's that kid's amazing. He's got to be on somebody's radar at this point. I mean, as far as uh, for the next
Getting signed.
going to the next level, because
Mm-hmm.
he plays on the power play, he plays on the PK. He's a strong 5v5 skater. Um, he's a big energy guy. Like I said, I've compared him to kind of an Alex Tuck type player, um, capable of doing anything. If you give him space, he can bury it on you. Um,
And he with a name like Ethan Frank, you would think he's a fairly decent sized kid.
he's a little bit on the small side. Um, I think he's listed at 5'10", 5'11", so a little bit on the smaller side, but plays big. Um, he's a guy that if it needs to be, he can put you on the wall and kind of hold you there pretty regularly by himself. But he can also he has great speed, great hand-eye coordination, uh, extraordinarily hockey smart. So I think potentially, it should have a home somewhere in the pro ranks. Where
Mm.
that is, I don't know. I don't pretend to know. I'd like to say he makes it to the NHL, and I would like to follow his career if he did. Um, so I mean, but potentially AHL type guy for is a strong likelihood. I think um, that in the NHL is kind of getting a little smaller anyway, so that could open doors for
Yeah.
him. But I hope he has a good game this weekend. He's one of the leading scorers for our club, both goal wise and assist wise. He's a big point getter. The team kind of goes as he goes, really. Um, and there was some news that we were getting some guys back, and there was some influx in the way the team was playing just due to illness and injuries and getting guys back, and roster shuffling. So hopefully we can figure all that out and have a good showing here against St. Cloud.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the only game we didn't mention, or series that we didn't mention, is Omaha versus Fairbanks. And I think we can both pretty easily say that that's going to be Omaha's series.
Mm-hmm.
The only real downside is the distance they have to travel for that one.
Is that up in Fairbanks, or is Omaha at home?
No, they're up in Fairbanks.
Oof.
Yeah, so long distance, gonna be dark outside pretty much all day. They're in their long winter nights section of the year, I believe, or getting close to it.
Yeah. It's just gotta stay in your hotel and get that artificial sun, get some beach vibes going in your room.
Right. But yeah, I think Omaha is able to pull away. I think Omaha might be able to sweep. I think of all the series this weekend, I think that has the highest likelihood of there being a sweep. Just because Fairbanks, I think not too long ago, they were a team that was considering folding their team. I believe Anchorage did fold, or was also on the brink of folding, or maybe they were going to combine, or there was some weird thing going on with Alaska schools and their hockey programs.
Anchorage did, but I believe they're coming back next year. It had to do with the pandemic, but I think they did get enough funding that they're gonna bring it back. It was just kind of like, not this year, not last year, not this year. But I was reading about it because I did get curious what Anchorage was doing, but Fairbanks has not folded.
Okay. And I think Omaha just plays a little bit better hockey than Fairbanks does, from what I remember of them a few years ago. So yeah, split between Western and St. Cloud. Hopefully Western sweeps, but at least a split would be a step in the right direction there. A split between Duluth and Dakota. If Denver wins on Friday, I think they have like a 75% chance of sweeping the weekend. If Miami wins on Friday, I don't see them being able to complete the sweep. So I see that one as really being more of a split weekend, and it just kind of depends on what happens Friday. If Denver wins Friday, I lean towards it being a sweep. If Miami wins Friday, I think Denver will answer back, and it'll be a split.
That makes sense. I have split with Western and Cloud. North Dakota sweeping, I think, even though I hope for at least a split. Denver sweeping, and then we both have Omaha sweeping. If they don't, that's going to be kind of a big blow to their program and their kids.
Yeah, with the way their season's going, yeah, that would be. If they get swept, it would be a big blow. I think they could handle a split, just because you could say, oh, the distance, and kind of play the excuse game a little bit, but not,
Yeah.
Travel is a thing. Travel wears you out. So
and especially up to Alaska. That's not going, short trip to Colorado or anything. It's a long flight.
Yeah,
that's 100%. For sure.
And to deal with the lack of sunlight, or just the disorientation that would bring when you're not used to it. It's not part of your
Yeah, your routine is thrown off.
Yeah, I mean, granted, it does get dark early down here in the contiguous 48, but I think it's different when you have like 15 minutes of sunlight at high noon.
Yeah, it's different when you're up at the North Pole versus down in, you know, Duluth.
I think no, I will be at both games. I will get to Friday's game pretty much as the first period ends, so I'll listen to that on the radio or watch it on the app.
And I will be listening on Friday because I'll be driving to go sit and do in a tree for one more weekend. And Saturday night, even if it's not on TV up north, I will have my computer and I'll be able to watch UMD whoop up on North Dakota on my computer because I did cave and get NCHC TV now again this year.
Did you do the full or did you do the team?
I just did the team.
Because I did the full because it was $10 more, and I was like, screw it. It's $10 at this point. So that's why I was able to get all 4 games.
Well, aren't you special?
I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, once granted, there's some technical issues that generally arise, but you're also having, for the most part, it's all run by, depending on the school, I'm pretty sure a lot of that production team is students using like school equipment and really just kind of videoing it. Because I know Western uses the radio call overlaid with the video feed. So that's not even, it's not the same feed being put out. It's combining 2 different things to put out there when it's a home Western game. And Denver had what looked like a normal sports channel affiliate of some sort do their games. I'm not sure what Duluth does or anybody else because I haven't really watched as many.
We have people do TV. I think they've used the TV broadcast for NCHC TV, and then North Dakota, they have their own network that even been able to watch in South Dakota when I've been out there, been able to pull that up. So they're all over the place with that, and that's what the NCHC TV pulls if you were to watch a North Dakota game.
I will say that be on the lookout if anyone stumbles upon this, and as we get ready to wrap the show up, if there is an away game for Western, I did a couple of the Colgate game. I believe I had a little bit of a watch along stream going. And then the Saturday Denver game, I also had one. So Saturdays, keep an eye out if Western is away to the Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/PaintedBronco. I may be doing more watch-alongs for at least Saturday games, and probably the playoffs once the playoffs start, if they're primarily on the NCHC TV app or ESPN. So,
will your face be painted, or are you going to lie to the people with your Twitter name?
My Twitter name is no lie, sir. How dare you?
Well, if you're doing a watch along, your face better be painted.
It's a lot of work. I'll consider it at some point. There's probably
playoffs.
I think playoffs I might have to do it for playoffs. I'll tell you this: if Western makes it to the big tournament, I'll do it for every game of the big tournament for sure.
That's warranted.
I will 100% do it for the big tournament. It's more of like, I don't know. I like it to be an in-person thing, partly because I'm not one that is really all that loud at games unless there's a reason to be. So I just let my face paint be loud for me. I'm trying to see if there's a game. A scheduling note, potentially. I haven't 100% decided, but I believe December 29th is a Tuesday. It might be a Wednesday now that I think about it. Never mind. It's a Wednesday. So I will not have to worry about it. I am potentially considering going to the Western Michigan versus Michigan State game. I currently have on my schedule to go to the Western Michigan versus Michigan game at Yost Arena with a friend. But I couldn't remember if it was Tuesday, Wednesday, or Wednesday, Thursday that the air quotes Great Lakes Invitational will be played. Which I believe is now being called the Great Lakes Showcase. And honestly, I believe is it Michigan Tech was the fourth team, or is the fourth team? And if so, they got the biggest hose out of everything that had to do with that.
Yeah, they're engineers. They're fine.
It's the principle of the matter, though. Like, I have to know which one it is before I sound like an idiot saying what I'm about to say. But
well, if Michigan Tech's in it, I think they should call it the John Scott Showcase, just because that's where he went to school. And I think most hockey fans would agree with that.
Yes, Michigan Tech. Okay, so the way the Great Lakes Invitational started, it was originally hosted by Michigan Tech. Like, they were the host school. At some point, whether it was because they wanted to use the Joe or something else, Michigan got invited. And then they got invited regularly. So they became a co-host. Then Michigan State became a lock-in third team, because I don't know why you don't want to invite as many different schools as you can. You have to have 3 out of the 4 be the same year in and year out, because if Michigan gets something, Michigan State has to have it. So now you have a co-hosted event between Michigan Tech and Michigan, where Michigan State is the third invitee every year, and you cycle the last one. Well, now with Little Caesars Arena being a basketball stadium, a NHL ice arena, a event center or concert venue, whatever you want to call it, there's not enough time in the year to schedule the Great Lakes Invitational. So they, I believe, have since changed the name to the Great Lakes Showcase. It will be held on campus between Michigan State and Michigan, where whoever was scheduled to play, like this year, Western plays at Michigan State on Wednesday, while Michigan and Michigan Tech play. The next night, those two teams travel to the opposite place so that Michigan plays Western and Tech plays State. So now Michigan Tech loses the right to call it the host, and they lose out on what may or may not have been considered a home game, even though it was on neutral ice.
Hey guys, thanks for starting this for us. We'll just take this and put it over here. We'll see you later.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just stupid, man. Like, I think that's a topic for a different podcast not this one. This one is for the NCHC hockey, not problems with Michigan sports and deals. So we'll save that story for later. But I do know that Western has won the Great Lakes Invitational the last few times that they have been, including, I believe, back-to-back years when it was moved to during the last lockout. I believe they won it back-to-back years when they were re-invited after the lockout was over and got to play outside at Comerica Park. So they definitely had their fair share of GLI victories. But it is a tournament that I will miss. I do not like the new layout of whatever they're trying to propose for that. It's silly. It doesn't maintain the same feel or grandeur, in my opinion. So, and if you agree or disagree with that opinion, you can put it in the comments, or you can keep it to yourself. So, suck on them apples.
Just let that one marinate for a little while.
Yeah, and that's how we're gonna end the show. That's not true. I mean, well, it is true, because that's gonna be the last thing I'm gonna say about in new stuff, because otherwise it's the same stuff. If you find this on the YouTubes, our links will be in the description. They're also during the show right there. Nope. How do I point? Right there. That's mine. That one's mine. Michael's is to the opposite corner that he's pointing at. There we go. Those are our names and Twitter handles. They'll also be in the description of this video on YouTube, as well as the show's Twitter handle. Or you can email the show at GoalHornsandFightSongs@gmail.com. I check it daily. Right now, it's usually just telling me that people have put things on Twitter that I should care about, but I don't. So, I think that'll wrap up the show, and thanks for whoever made it this far into it.
Have a good night.
I'll talk to you next week.